Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of MK Invasion, hosted by Forever Entertainment. I'm your host, Coley Weber. You'll know me from SNX Radio, Coley UFO over on Twitter, and between the two, you should be able to find me. Anyway, welcome to another episode. As I said before, it's a super exciting one. Might be somebody that my audience will recognize for sure. So, but before I get into it, I just want to give you a little information that tonight's episode is brought to you by Killer Pizza, the upcoming feature film from Forever Entertainment. Killer Pizza is starring some of horror's biggest actors. They have people from looks like 1,000 Corpses, Wedding Singer, more. I mean, it's loaded, jam packed. So the Indiegogo today, that's where it's through. Amazing perks available for the backers, including unique acting opportunities, official production credits. So that's pretty awesome. Also, check out Forever Entertainment is also putting up MK Invasion on the website. So you can go and find that. It's brand new at www.scarezone.net. So tonight we have Jehan Sattaur from Boundless. Oh my gosh, Authenticities. So I want to say it correctly. Anyway, we're just going to bring him on out and give him his introduction. Let him tell you a little bit about himself, because usually he's on his podcast rocking it, but tonight he's over here. So why don't you tell our audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, usually
they don't know you.
Yeah, usually I'm just in the corner minding my own damn business, but I'm Jehan Sattaur. Many of you may actually know me. I'm usually in the chat with Coley saying inappropriate stuff, but I'm also a complementary therapist, accredited self-sabotage coach who uses the tools of cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy to get to the root causes of self-sabotaging beliefs and behaviors. And I don't want to say remove them permanently, but pretty much so you can live a fully empowered, peaceful, and purposeful life. I also host the Boundless Authenticity podcast, and that basically is like hell on earth. If you think that the world is what the TV says it is, because it's not. You can follow the Boundless Authenticity podcast on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Rumble, YouTube. And I also host another podcast called Shadows of Curiosity that ventures into fringe topics, unexplained phenomena, and mysterious stuff. So that's available exclusively on Spreaker.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're rocking it over there on speaker. I can't talk tonight. But your audio, that's pretty amazing. So your show, just to let everybody know, I've done a few shows on his side of it. So we really have gone in like extent to uncover some truths in our community, and you really do call out a lot of that. So I appreciate you for walking the talk, buddy. You know what I mean?
Well, I appreciate you for appreciating me and contributing positively to the show because we have done quite some research and called out some fake stuff.
Yes, we have. So bravo to that. So let's get into it. So my other favorite topic, other than UFOs or the unknown, is I'm a mental health therapist. I guess I say was if you count being in an office for it. But so we share a lot of that. I have a huge passion for psychology and things, and what you said too. It's like so much of human behavior is all so it breaks down into different ways, but yeah, why don't you tell a little bit more? Because we don't get to hear that side of you very often. So I'm excited to learn because you don't really you talk about it to a certain degree, but now we really get to dig down deep on who you are.
Yeah, I've done hundreds of podcasts, probably more than 200. And what I've realized is that it isn't that the audience isn't interested, it's that the host is a very bad host. They're not really understanding what I'm talking about, or maybe they're chronic self sabotagers themselves. So I actually stopped doing that. And there are episodes of the Boundless Authenticity podcast that are available. Some are behind the Spreaker Supporters Club paywall, but today I've been working on actually taking some of them off because whenever I do a monologue, a solo podcast, it's something that is coming from like 10, 15 years of research. So I've actually had to sit there for a long time and condense almost a decade or more of information into a bite size format. So yeah, I can talk about all kinds of different stuff related to hypnotherapy, but I guess the best and most helpful way to talk about hypnotherapy for the audience is what is not hypnotherapy. It's a weird question, right? What isn't hypnotherapy? And not a lot of stuff. That's the answer to that question. We are mostly in a hypnotic trance. And so I guess the best way to explain a whole bunch of stuff in a short space of time is to just explain that, as a collective, we're experiencing these radical changes. And the whole point of seeking any kind of psychotherapeutical intervention in your life, any counseling, any hypnotherapy, any talk therapy, any CBT, DBT, whatever it is, any coaching, or just having a chat with a family member or a friend, is to get rid of something that you can then move towards a closer idea of what your vision of beauty and love and joy and abundance and all those SEO keywords are. Total freedom is the whole point of counseling, right? So
Right.
um I
I
think
say to
that,
break the programming, a lot of it.
well, that's where I will get even more complex there when you bring up that word programming, because in hypnosis, programming is usually linguistic, and then you have the behavior things like conditioning, which are
Yes.
just based on the rewards that you get for doing certain things. And in a lot of ways they merge, and then in a lot of other ways they diverge. So it's a very strange and complex topic to get into, but I can get into that later. I'll let you ask me some more questions and actually guide
I
the
got into
interview.
cryptology and then all that, like, I went into because I studied it too, and I was a DDP but I did all this stuff, like, I saw how powerful it was. When I did EMDR, I did it on like, through somebody, but I did it on myself, right? So I was like, I could not get in front of people and talk. I couldn't do it. I would shake. Like, I literally would be like a leaf. And I don't even think I barely passed, like, a speech class to save my life, but I did it before, right? And I had to get up in front of all my colleagues and, like, 300 people and give this speech that was only supposed to be 5 minutes, and it was on some, like, this emotional topic, and I thought, "There's no way I'm ever gonna be able to do this." So I did EMDR on myself. I swear to God, I went up there, it was like watching somebody else on there, and it completely took away that fear. Like, if I even being a therapist, but not experiencing that myself, I was like, "Wow." Like, that was crazy. So I believe that there's so many changes, but there's unethical changes we both know you can make too, right? With the brain mapping. And if you have somebody in there that's not of good intention, and it's like there's so much manipulation. And I think that's kind of what I hear you saying too. It's like all around us, everywhere you look, it's yeah, because you're in that hypnotic state. We're walking around most of the time half awake, if at best.
you know, quite frankly, whenever licensed hypnotherapists, those clinical dudes hear me talk, most of them shit their pants and they don't want to hear me talk about it because they're kind of like la 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 because it goes against their conditioning that they get. And I get that. I respect that if that's their stance, but the question still comes back down to what is not hypnosis. Because if we didn't transition through the alpha brainwave state for at least 7 hours throughout each day, then we would be walking around, as I like to say, having a series of mini strokes because there's so much information that the unconscious processes need to take in. Okay, so you're talking about bits of information. People don't like to be as simplistic and say that the brain is like a computer, but essentially it is. And in order to avoid overclocking and overheating, you have to. So there's going to be moments throughout the day where, that's why the common example is if you're driving in your car and you don't remember how you got to your destination, you were in a trance state.
Right.
But also simple things like a state of expectation, like you tell me I got to get here by 8:45 for this meeting at 9, and if I was a regular person that wasn't in control of my faculties, I would have immediately started to get nervous and went into a hypnotic trance induced by my own emotions and nervous system. And so essentially what's happening is that we live
Cellular
in an
memory.
environment that is designed to screw up your nervous system at all times. And that's the fundamental system of dominance, governance, um, how people will keep you thinking that perhaps you don't belong in this world. Essentially, when you go to any counseling form, whatever it is, you're supposed to be taking stock of anything that you don't need. So it's either going to be like conditioning or beliefs or poor dietary habits or self-sabotaging thoughts or emotions and behaviors that just put you in trouble or they cause you great discomfort or maybe even pain in some circumstances. So I feel like if we don't continue to redirect the focus in that direction, that's when we start to lose ground and we see all of these issues with psychiatry and conventional therapy where people are just getting thrown on pills because others don't want to deal with it. And I'm not against medication either, but does it actually serve a purpose in the majority of people? I would have to say my opinion is no, because I know plenty of people who are diagnosed with BPD, anxiety, schizophrenia, all that stuff, and they get better when they wean themselves off of medication
Yeah.
and actually start taking personal responsibility 100%
Yeah.
for what is
For
going on,
sure. You have to. You have to. If you don't get a break, it's not like it's crazy because you think, man, they would decrease dosages and usually, but that's like the last thing they go. If you're not advocating for yourself and so many of the repercussions for taking medications and the side effects, and like you said, what's the purpose of all of it? Like if you're taking it and you're reading a bag of items that said some of the side effects, and I'm like, we're crazy with the warning labels like this, we're being crazy. We need to double and triple think it. You really do. But
Hmm.
I mean, that is my own opinion. I know some medications people cannot be without. I mean, there's, some like pathological things that do, but usually in the psychotropics, like the area that we're in, a lot of it, so much of it is sedative. It's like you'll see somebody and they're in the, like you said, that suggestive state, that state of the trance. It's like zombies. So, it's a catch 22.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not working so much with with people who have a lot of pain and things like that. I do get requests for that, and that's fine. But that stuff is a lot easier than fighting with someone for their own freedom, their own self imposed prison, because it's a lot of procrastination or people pleasing or self doubt, fear of failure, um, fear of success, negative self talk.
Why is it
Addiction
easier
is
to
a
stay
huge
there?
one.
Why is it this
Why
is
is
my
it
big
easier to stay
question.
there?
Yeah, why is it easier for people to, because I swear to you, like, changing, and you would think that this other road, because of self-sabotage of whatever, why is it easier for them to keep going down that bumpy, horrible road?
Well, people seem to like to undermine themselves because we just get conditioned from the time we're born to be in fear of change, fear of the unknown, to hang on to things that we know don't serve us, make us sick, make us unfit, fat, unable to think clearly, unable to connect with some spiritual side. And from everything that we witness from the time we're born, we're just told that we're supposed to live inside of a limitation. Don't push the boundaries of what you think and know. And the issue with that is that, like, everything is mind. And so the only reason that we talk about conscious and subconscious is so that people logically can make the connection. But what they don't understand is that so many of us are just walking around like 1% conscious,
Right?
and depending on our level of stress or what we put in our bodies or our experiences, because many of us have just been pushed into this life circumstance where we're just an automaton.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes I have said that it's because some people are dumb, and it's because some people just want to stay there, and then there's others that are just, they don't know what they don't know, and as they experience things, they're open to new information. But then there's also a difference between openness and receptivity. Somebody's that
Yeah.
open, like if somebody is open to something you have to say, Coley, you know that they'll hear you, but then they'll go right back to being the same way when you're done.
Right.
But somebody that's receptive is going to basically take the information, walk away, think about it, and come back and be like, hey, you know what? I got a couple more questions for you. Like, I definitely see what you're talking about. And then they will probably change and grow, right?
Right.
But if you know that you have a very small percentage of the conscious mind that's actually creative and responsible for the free will, and yet you have 95 to 99% of you that is like, nope, we're not doing that. We're just doing everything that we know already what to do, and we're not going to deviate from that. Then change becomes incredibly difficult by default. And most of us are just walking around with this negative programming and conditioning and whatever. And I mean,
Yeah.
what
Right.
even is the world right now where we're absolutely inundated with toxins from every direction? It's in the sky, it's in the
Right.
food, pesticides in everything. We get taught to,
Preservatives alone, like, when your bread outlasts, I mean, this is it's a little crazy. Yeah,
yeah, your
definitely.
bread's gonna be alive longer than you. I mean,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
put the McDonald's in a
Oh god.
box, and 75 years later, it's still good.
Still
I mean,
there, just throw it in the microwave and yeah, soften
yeah,
it
we get
up.
told to we get told to live fast and die young, all this cultural conditioning
Oh,
around that, so you start
only the
drinking.
good die young. Oh, yeah, it's all around us, all around
Yeah,
us.
you start drinking, and there's a Starbucks on every corner, so you're drinking 10 lattes a day, and you really only need probably a few sips to get yourself going, but you commit to the whole cup, and then next thing you know,
I don't wanna hear about that.
you're
Not about that
just
caffeine.
you're
I need
just
that.
huh?
I'm
You want to
joking.
hear it? You want
No,
to
I
hear
said
about
I
it, or you
don't wanna
don't?
hear about that caffeine. I said
You,
I need that. No.
yeah, you gotta think about why you need that and how much you actually need. That's the issue with it, because
I
it's
abuse
not that
it.
coffee is inherently bad. It's that the people that make the coffee don't have good intentions. They want to sell you more coffee.
I'm
So they
guilty.
make the stuff more addictive, and they have pesticides in it, and all this different stuff that
I
when you
even
drink
drink the
that,
aspartame ones. That's how
huh?
bad it is. I said I drink the zero even. That's how bad I am. I'm gonna own it.
Well, you
I
got to
have a
fix that though,
problem.
because that's
No.
it's not the caffeine,
I don't wanna fix that. That's, like, the
it's
only
the
thing I
chemical
don't wanna
makeup.
fix. Oh,
Well, there you
gosh.
are. The best way to deal with that stuff, put you over my knee and beat your ass. Because nobody's saying that you can't have caffeine, but you
That's
get what I'm
good.
saying. You're hearing caffeine is bad when I'm telling
I
you
didn't hear
that
that.
not all caffeine is created equal. And so
And
is
I'm,
what you're
like, the
consuming
worst of the
organic,
worst. Yeah, it's like
right?
Mountain Dew Zero. I can't and
Yeah.
it's not just, like, in the afternoon. I mean, it's this is coffee sometimes,
Yeah,
and
it's
I just
harder for women though, because women have all of these different things that happen to their body a bajillion times a month that is
yes,
taxing on the
that
body,
is why.
taxing on the adrenal function. After you have kids, your adrenal function is messed with. All these different things. And if you're a
Yeah,
doctor, a nurse, or whatever, you probably might need a cup to make sure somebody else stays alive. So I'm not
that's a good
against
point. I think
caffeine.
the people on the road that they're safer in the mornings. I've
What
had
I'm against is the difference between a cup of coffee and clear drug use. If you get what I'm
right?
saying.
There is a
Um,
difference, even though
mhm.
that kinda bothers me because I feel like, and then there's all the different levels, but when you hear drug, you know what I mean? You're thinking like, but caffeine technically falls under there, but it isn't as extreme. Somebody with a caffeine, like, unless I don't know, like, unless you have some sort of added, illness on top of it, you're not gonna go crazy, but then on the other spectrum, I mean, it's not like it's crack or something, it's Mountain
Well,
Dew,
the thing
like,
about it is that it's kind of like crack, and it's in the DSM-5. But the
I
reason why they
know.
can't put the information that they know about it in the DSM-5 is because the people that sponsor the DSM-5 are the caffeine lobbyists and the coffee companies, right? So they can't even put it in there in a way that's like, okay, here's the correct dosage for you. But every person has their own individual dosage of caffeine that their body can tolerate before they go crazy. And so for some person, that might actually be 10 cups, and another person, 10 cups might kill him. Or, one or two cups might be masking the pain of underlying health issues because it numbs the body, it numbs the mind, and it creates serious issues for people. So, as I said,
Think
it's not
people
that
after
caffeine's bad.
the way the
Mhm.
world is, when you're talking about the way the world is, like, it really, like, I don't know, if you go back and you look back, and I'm not gonna take it any further than that, but how much has changed in the last 5 years in people's states. It's like if they had maybe, like, something going back and just being through you can tell that this is a traumatized nation, this is a traumatized world right now. So everybody's like, if they had little things that were going on, it's like now it seems like exaggerated. Like it's like people are kind of, in that state, like to snap out of it. It's like a state. Jesse Marcel talks about it, the third. He calls it like a state of hibernation almost. But we're walking around so suggestive. Like, is that part of I'm just curious as to your take on it, because I mean, we could think totally being from two totally different schools of thought. So I'm just wondering what your take is on like trauma, and especially like let's take it into the ET like world, and the only way is an experiencer, and that's how they're getting. And that you think of the traumatized children and stuff going on, and the stuff like in the state of suggestion. What do you think is like? What do you think about all that?
Okay, so that's kind of where we were going with the caffeine thing anyway, or at least where I was trying to go with it.
Yeah, I just
It's
shoved you
that it's that
that way.
anything that is affecting the limbic system is going to cause you to play out unprocessed trauma, unhealed trauma, okay? And so the best way to put this is again through the lens of many of us are just byproducts of what we have been conditioned to learn and how we have learned to respond based on our unique individual experiences in our environment. So, just to reference the caffeine thing again, my main point there is that no one has come off of a conveyor belt. So, everyone in that respect has their amount of caffeine that's good. And then the amount that's toxic for them. Everyone has that amount of sugar that's good and that's toxic for them. And everything else is kind of like that. Everyone responds differently and uniquely based on all of their subconscious processes. And that's mostly installed by repetitive content in the environment. So, our problem at this point in time is that everybody knows that something's wrong, but nobody wants to talk about it. And then you're also dealing with everything that you've been conditioned to accept in terms of destructive habits and activities that get classified as fun and normal, even though they might be really bad for you. And it's actually systematically weakening the way that you think. It's stealing your health from you, it's stealing your energy from you. You have no vitality, you have very little thinking capacity, because when you're in survival mode, that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to survive. And so you have so many different things that will trigger that. And you literally have dudes that are sitting around in labs that are trying to make new chemicals, recalibrating old ones, like sugar, for example. They're going to make that stuff more addictive, which is hacking your brain pathways, giving your system cravings that are hard to override and hard to refuse with just your thinking. So if you're having trauma and stuff that's unprocessed and you are hooked on Red Bull, you're a goner because you're never going to snap out of that cycle now,
Won't give you wings. Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it depends on the degree to which you have been affected. And so, from the perspective that I do my work, I focus a lot on the limbic system because if, let's say, the world controllers, I'm going to say very specifically and explicitly, the world controllers are very concerned with one question when they get up: how can we trigger these people's limbic systems today so that their default brain pathways that determine all behavior go fucking haywire and they can't think for themselves or
They
create
short
anything
circuit.
good or
Yeah.
change anything that will actually stop us. Like, how can we get them to stay subservient, obedient, weak, and sick to continue feeding the machine that we've built? And so I just basically look at three main pathways that are sending and receiving information. And then that information is translated into some kind of an emotion, which is usually negative, right?
Mhm.
And so even everything about this isn't traditionally hypnotherapy. It's neuroscience. It's fact and evidence based because I only want to deal with the facts to help my clients. I spend a lot of time chasing my own tail early on in my early years trying to figure out what the fuck was that when I had a client saying something and then what they were saying they were experiencing in their life wasn't matching up to what they tell us.
Right. Say one
Yeah.
thing, do another. That's what used to drive me insane. So, I at first I did it for 7 years. I dealt with kids with reactive attachment disorder, then emotional intensity disorder now. So, it was like the kids potentially that could be the serial killers in the world. Like those are who my clients profiled out to be. So they're always doing crazy stuff, like finding knives under their beds or raise. I mean, like, it was like the extreme, like to the cases where they had to move them out of state, change their identity, and they were readopted like immediately, like starting
Mhm.
fires with animals, and like there was a percentage of them, right, that I came across, and it was like they had the lights were on, right? Literally, like I'm not saying this as like lights are on, no one's home, but truly, like their like eyes were open, but there was empty shell. Like I can't even. I've talked to other therapists about it. I was like, did the air get like more? Was it like dense? Like it was like it's almost like we were in a fog, and it was like so hard to breathe when they were in the same room. And then it started like trickling down into my life where it was like, I was like, "Oh, I can't do the negativity hour after hour after hour again, especially with what was going on." And like, going back 5 years ago, I was like, this is insane. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Almost like split everything to the point. So I can kind of understand that, but it's still, it's like, some of that, it's so much of that, it does, they have the countertransference. There's so many things, like your brain and every action that you're engaging with other people, even in this conversation now, like by us going back and forth, it affects the serotonin in your brain. For us engaging in a conversation, it affects the dopamine in your brain, right? So you can do, and then if like, oh, take somebody's hand and you give them like that deep massage, the oxytocin. So now you got them in a full state. And that's what we did with my clients when they would come in. First thing, they would take moms would get lotion and massage their hands because they're trying to bond. They're usually adopted kids. They had no attachment figures. So, and I think literally, that's how easy it is to put somebody into that hypnotic state. And people don't even realize it.
Yeah, again, that's why I say, what isn't hypnosis? Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot at all. Everything is just triggering that limbic system, and as soon as that gets ticked off, you're an automaton to your emotions or conditioned behaviors and thoughts. And what conversations like this are meant to do and are actually doing, I want people to understand that when we have controversial, outside of the narrative conversations like this, it forces those fuckers over there to be like, oh shit, and they change their ways. So now, and within conventional therapy, we're actually seeing a lot of people who were traditionally brainwashed by their licensing, or who are, afraid of getting called into the office for trying something outside of protocol. Now they're actually willing to go deeper and actually take a look at the person as a whole. Because when a person isn't treated like that, then that's when you get the people that come to you and they say, oh, therapy didn't work for me, or whatever the case is, right? Or I felt like they just wanted to medicate me, or whatever
You
the
didn't
case.
work for therapy, then I'd say.
But what yeah, but what people don't understand is that it didn't even really start out that way. I like to call them the cult of psychotherapy because it's very cultish, and it's more like do as I say and nothing else in that realm for a lot of the licensed therapists that I speak to, especially.
Right for me and not for the
Um,
oh, for sure.
yeah, but it didn't start out that way. Traditionally, in psychiatry, a lot of those guys were told, look at the person's health, look at what they're putting in their body, all those different things. And there's still a lot of great practitioners out there that are taking account of all those things. So you have to sit with a person for an extended period of time and figure out everything that's going on in their life first before
You
you
have to
start
look at
trying
their
to
life
throw.
way before. Most of it, I would say, in any encounter, like depression. Well, what happened is not purely chemical. It's usually there's a list of environmental things, and that's exactly where I
Mhm.
think people go wrong in this. Is that they
Exactly. And
skip over and they're like, oh no, no, this is they're bipolar and they're swinging. Like, why do they seem bipolar? Maybe you're seeing something that is like somebody who's not sleeping at night because they have you don't know, and are going through something so traumatic for them that they're in that heightened state, like where they kind of seem manic, or just different symptoms, but people don't want to look there either. So true. You can go to
I'll
10
tell you
different
what, though,
ones,
you just
10
said something
different
about
ways.
manic, and what I found in about 95 out of 100 cases is that when somebody seems manic, they have a lot to unpack, and nobody's ever just opened up a can of shut the fuck up and listen before. And so, if you can actually do that and have a good energy and seem like you are able to reference the things that they're talking about and guide them very subtly in the right direction, as long as their environment isn't completely freaking toxic, that person will make a very small change. So you're really just looking to open up a very small corner of their mind, sweep it out for dust, throw it in the garbage, and then you come back again later
I can't
once
do that.
changes have been made. You have to have patience and empathy.
You patience. I lack that anymore. But that's where yeah, you're right. Cause I've become the rip off the Band-Aid person. It's like where before I would listen week after week, you got to be patient. You plant a seed from like it takes a second to grow. It's not like a chia thing where it grows overnight. So
Yeah.
I don't I lost that patience. How do you stay there? Like, how do you continue to keep that? Because it's challenging.
Because I always remember that when I needed help and I tried to talk to people, they would say they didn't have time for it, right? So I'm very emotionally bonded to that moment in my life where I was reaching out, asking for help, and I thought that because nobody wanted to help, I should probably just kill myself, you know?
So you've
So I,
ended it over
so,
that.
huh?
So
What's that?
it was so deep with you, you thought about ending it right there, like
Absolutely.
everything.
I tried 3 times. Actually, the thing that got me to wake up was I tried the third time and it didn't work. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I can't even fucking kill myself right. And when I heard myself say that out loud, I paused. And then I just had an emotional release after that. And I realized that, you know what? Everything's got to be in my hands. I can't rely on anybody else because nobody's listening. They're all too concerned with their own BS, you know? And
Nobody could hear you crying out.
no, because they were struggling too, and they were struggling to the degree that they're selfish. So when somebody's in survival mode, they're very selfish, and they don't understand what they do. They know not what they do. They don't know. One of my favorite questions is how aware are you of how aware you are? And I also like to follow that up with another catchy phrase: life happens in levels, but you arrive in stages. So the healing journey is about getting a person to a stage. And it's like Super Mario. You run through that stage, you have like 7 stages in a level. So world number 1, you go through that and you jump on some shit, mushrooms and Koopa Troopers or whatnot. You get to the end and dun, 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 and you climb up the freaking flagstaff and you're on to the next stage, right? And eventually you will beat the game. So it's about sitting with people, remembering where I was when I realized what was going on, and that I need to teach this person how to have radical empathy for themselves, but also understand that compassion for the self means that you have to be willing to take 100% personal responsibility for what you did,
Yeah.
what you think, what you're currently doing that perpetuates it. And
Right.
also, I'll talk about the cereal box hypothesis, which is just that every program, like I said, for me, that's mostly linguistic based, but it could be as a result of conditioning or it could be as a result of something they've seen on TV. In that cereal box, every bit of cereal, so you have Captain Crunch, for example, and that's a cereal box. You empty that out, each piece that goes into your bowl is a thought that's linked to that program, Captain Crunch. Now swap that out with I'm not good enough somehow. You have to get a person to empty every single thought and pattern that's related to I'm not good enough until that box is empty. And then you can discard that box. And that person will actually permanently go through their life without acting from a belief that they're not good enough somehow. So there's many different things that go along with it. The hypnosis part doesn't have to be complex. All I ask them to do is sit in a comfortable chair and listen to the sound of my voice. I relax them. I bring in the utilization technique, which just means, as you would know, whatever they have in their mind, whatever imagery is familiar to them, whatever their environment looks like, anything that's going on, the sounds in their environment, I can tell them, whatever you hear will only make you 10 times more relaxed every time you hear it, just to make sure that they stay focused on task. But a lot of stuff is really very simple. It's really about taking them to an image in their mind that is safe, realizing that that's not harmful. It doesn't have any emotional stings to it. And then showing them that, okay, now let's look at something that's a little bit worse than that. How does that feel? Where do you feel that in your body? What's the somatic response that's in your body? Can you point to that? If you can point to it, you can name it and shame it. Who do you need to forgive? Where did you decide that you needed to be a particular way? There's so many different things that go along that route, and but it's like
We came
emptying
from
that cereal
shame,
box.
the shame piece. Like, that was the theory that I came from behind the attachment theory, was that it was what we held shame over.
A lot
It's
of it
kind
is
of along the
shame.
same lines, yeah.
A lot of it is, shame and guilt are best friends. They hang out together.
Oh, yeah.
Unforgiveness and regret, rejection, resentment hang out at the bar with guilt and shame, tossing it back, and you usually just need to find one of those things and you'll find its buddies hanging out there. A lot of visual imagery, if you can disable a traumatic event in small pieces based on what they're comfortable with, that person will find their way to being healed in a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's
It's a
about
cellular
patience.
memory. How do you break the
Mhm.
cellular memory? Because
Well,
I sometimes I react to, like, I went through some traumatic things, and there's times where my brain, I'm like, I logically know that this isn't, like, that terrible, like, stress-wise, but my body is, like, shaking because it remembers. So it's like undoing that cellular memory.
the complexity of it, it's again, you have to arrive in stages, very, very small stages. You
No.
can just look at one event, even using this is the power of hypnotherapy. You can look at one very small event, look at one small fragment, one very small image, whatever is safe to look at. It could be the events leading up to it, if a person's comfortable with that. It could be events afterward, if a person's comfortable with it. And get that person to forgive and make peace with that, taking away any rejection or resentment or any other hurt, shame, guilt, whatever it is, sadness. Work on that, and eventually it's like a puzzle piece. So it's just one thing at a time. Sometimes a puzzle has 5,000 pieces, other times it only has like 10 or 100.
I use that a
And
lot
I
too.
mean, I would love everything to be as easy as that, but in
Some
reality, for
pieces
most
are
cases,
middle
it's not.
pieces without any edges around it. Sometimes I used to say to my
Mhm.
clients, I'd be like, "Give me an end piece at least. Just give me an end piece to this
Yeah.
puzzle, because it's
But like
hard."
you're talking about seeing something and having a reaction, well, is that ancestral that you're carrying? Is that stuff that our ancestors were shamed into? A lot of us,
Oh, yeah.
our ancestors were beaten, shot at, chased by something. And what is it? I know that past lives are real because I've experienced them myself, and I've had clients go all the way back to periods of time that I didn't even really think existed. And they could tell me that they saw this and that before a traumatic event happened. I've had it happen to myself as well, where I saw myself in Chicago before everything got lit on fire, you know? Um, so you never know. But then there's also the shit that's on TV. The shit that's on TV is terrible. And it's all carefully put together to traumatize you
Right.
through the same pathways that I was referencing earlier. Because everything to do with a screen, I like to call these devices shit squares or death rectangles because that's all they're full of. It's a bunch of shit. But as soon as you look at any screen, your prefrontal cortex deactivates. Now you have people who
And your
have mental
brain
health.
can't tell the difference between what it's seeing and what it's actually seeing in the world. It can't tell, like, we can logically put that in categories. Our brain cannot. That's scary.
Right. And so everything within the three major pathways that determine behavior, everything begins at the prefrontal cortex. So damage to the prefrontal cortex means damage to your mental health, damage to your brain. And in the first pathway that I like to talk about all the time, it's the contentment pathway. So that's all about serotonin being distributed from the prefrontal cortex. Whatever triggers that once it's deactivated or stimulated by a chemical becomes a problem for you because it's screwing up your dorsal raphe nucleus, and that's just gonna manufacture a small amount of serotonin, and then it travels to different areas throughout your brain, right? And it's basically dealing with the parts of the brain that process experiences and judge them as good or bad, right? And
Mhm.
how serotonin is acting as that basic complex system goes, it's all about formulating different cognitive outcomes for things depending on the clusters of neurons that you have uniquely built throughout your unique experiences of life, right? So again, nobody's come off of a conveyor belt, but the brain just works in one way that's under attack 24/7 by the world controllers. So then you have the favorite one of mine, which is the stress fear memory pathway. and that's made up of the amygdala, which is the stress and fear center for
Oh,
those that
'cause
don't
that
know.
with the amygdala, it's like I used to tell my clients, I was like, "They hear an alarm going off, that amygdala is like, "Mer," like an alarm going off in their head, like, that's literally how I used to explain it to people.
Mm. Yeah, and people are going to shit their pants when they hear this because the amygdala is talking to the hypothalamus, which is controlling your hormones, cortisol being one of them.
Yep.
Hypothalamus is then talking to your sympathetic nervous system to prepare you to go into fight or flight mode, and that then tells your vagus nerve to stop working because you need to prepare for an emergency.
Yep.
That then talks to the hippocampus, which is like a tape recorder. It's your memory center, and
Yep.
that's interpreting memories as either good or bad. So when you say that the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between reality and what's on a screen, that's how that all works, because you have pain from your childhood as well as the emotional content from the last movie that you watched, the last
Mhm.
song that you listened to. It's all stored in different parts of your brain for reference. When something new comes up in your life, you don't have a reference for that through childhood trauma. You're taking then from your hippocampus what it remembers from TV. And people don't like to hear that because then they have to turn off the fucking TV, or they have to pick and choose what they watch based on how that makes them feel. And most people are living on such a level of unawareness that probably watching a simple movie is not good for them. Um,
No. No,
Prefrontal cortex is the
definitely
part of the
not.
brain that is supposed to put a limit on behaviors that put you in danger. But if
Yeah,
it's
it's for
screwed up
executive
because you spend
functioning, right?
3 hours a day doom scrolling, then you don't know how to
And
get
people
in.
don't even remember. That's just it. Your brain records it. We tell a story. We can't remember everything our brains can second by second. We can't do it. But we pick up where we left off the story before. So it's everything builds. Like the people build a
Mhm,
story along the way. What I
mhm,
find fascinating is the story that you talked about, and it all ties into this because you're a magician. Magician, Jesus, sorry, a musician. I've been doing this all day with words. I'm like polymorphing them in weird ways. Anyway, so music and how you talked about how like in that state of suggestion and how sometimes there are copyright issues because there's multiple people that are coming and they have with the same type of song, correct? Is that what you were telling me? Did I paraphrase that like
Yeah,
correctly?
yeah, yeah. When we were talking with Solomon, yeah, I was trying to explain that a lot of copyright lawsuits just happen purely by chance, innocently, because we're dealing with streams of consciousness coming into the brain for interpretation all day long, too. So, like you were saying, um, if a person's not in control of their executive function really, and they just, oh, I hear this idea in my head, they're going to chase that. And to go down the route of the more um, crazy stuff, you have
Ooh.
these streams of consciousness that are coming from interdimensional realms, information that exists because, okay, you have the subconscious faculty. Everything is mind. Mind is the interface between these different dimensions. Within the dimensional realm, there are fragments of you that exist. This is where you get into past life. What is a past life? A past life is not really something that is happening in the past, but it's also happening across a different timeline for you as well. That's why it's available for you to access within Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic field theory. You jump into that and you realize that, okay, future lives also exist, aspects of you that are on a different timeline happening simultaneously, but it hasn't happened yet in this reality. So based on your free will and your choices, the world controllers can put things in your mind so you create stuff for them or keep you distracted from your own healing, and you might never know what's in the field waiting for you to heal or to choose from. This brings up the issue of free will then. You
Do you
think you're
think that
sitting
we
around.
jump timelines ever?
We jump the timelines all day long,
Yeah.
all day long, and you jump into that realm of like Bigfoot and ETs and stuff like that. Do these beings exist on this plane with us, or do they exist on parallel timelines just beyond the veil? You understand?
Yeah.
So you could
Some of
walk
us
through a
can
portal.
see a little bit further through that than others, which is interesting.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was just talking with Geraldine Orozco about this, and she was explaining even in further greater detail than I ever even thought about it as to where the pineal gland interfaces with the heart directly on an energetic basis. And so people who are more loving, more spiritually aware, more connected to religion in the healthy way, um, are able to see much easier. They can see portals, they can see all, like our friend Laura, like she can see that shit all day. That shit comes to
Oh,
her
yeah, that's it.
all
I
day, every day,
know Laura
you
for a
know?
couple years now. I've seen her pictures, and the thing of it is she's got it's her personality. I Anybody in this, they're kind of like the one of a kind, you know? She's got a distinct, and I've seen, you have not believed, but she's got cameras going nonstop, but she's so dedicated to, it's like she's got a way of communicating. That's totally her thing. It's like we
Mhm.
all kind of have that, different sliver in there. And like what, if we would only learn, the problem is it gets clouded. It's like you wonder, or that sense of doubt comes in, like who's being legit, who's not. I've seen so much of Laura's stuff. Laura, like, she eats, sleeps, and drinks it. That's how dedicated she is to it. I
Yeah.
really. And then you have other people, which the crappy part about it is then you have other people out there playing those mind games, like, oh, that's me, when they're not the Laura. That's not Laura. Like if there's I always put people, kind of like along the lines, like Laura's in my we're go-to person when I have questions on that stuff. She's got, I mean, her amazing connection. She's like communicating. It's almost like I felt like I was like with ET, like I had that bond. Like I go out there, it sounds crazy, but I'd be like, it was almost like I was waiting for a friend to come back. It was just like I had that type of attachment to it.
That seems to be a common thread with experiencers of ET as well. They come to them and it feels like a long lost parent
Yeah.
or something,
It's
a
like
family
it's
member.
like you miss them when they're gone, almost, in a weird way, and I'm like, so I don't feel like it's like Stockholm syndrome, like people going around today, like, I'm not, it's not a captive. There was an equal trade-off in my experiences. Not everybody's gonna see this or perceive it the same way. But 2, I know that, in that state, you always wonder, like, because, like you said, how consciously aware, you have to really work yourself to be a conscious experiencer. I would sit there throughout my day and I'd be like, "Okay, notice, like, if this happens again, what do you smell? What do you feel? Is the room cold? Is there, like, do you smell anything? Is there, like, feelings that you get?" So I could stay too. It's like fighting going under anesthesia, it's like
Okay, so
trying
what
to
did you
take
just say
as
there?
long as
Because
you can.
that is so important for people to understand it, as we're coming to the near the end here. You are trying to ground yourself in the experience. So it's
Mhm.
the same process for recovering from anxiety and panic attacks. It's the same thing when you're dealing with depression. It's the same thing when you're unpacking unconscious programs playing out and you're trying to see them consciously. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? What do I smell? What do I taste? What am I touching? You know,
Yeah,
grounding
absolutely.
yourself in that reality to make sure you're processing everything in the way that you should, and then you have access then to this other thing that is supposedly happening in a different realm, but it's also happening on this timeline, right? So
Right.
that's really what it boils down to, and people should come to a point now where they're unafraid to actually do that, because that's what's keeping us stuck, and that's what's going to keep us, locked up in digital enslavement and all this other crap that they're doing because of people's unawareness and unwillingness to be aware.
Right, and the longer you can stay aware, the less and the more control, excuse me, the more control you have and less they're in control. So the more you can stay present in the moment, authentic, genuine, and carry out a conversation you're not premeditating to talk about, like in this moment, like when you and I are having that genuine, not thinking, what am I going to say next or anything like that? That's in that moment. The more you can stay present like that, the more opportunity you have to make choices for yourself.
Absolutely.
I agree 1000%. So let's just like end this. Like, how do you think and why do you think trauma also in that state. Like it's also, there's many different states like of being, but in that trauma, why do you think that ET is do you think it's like cellular memory? I have a theory, like some of it, like maybe we know in our head that they're not really harming us in ways that we, perceive, but here, if somebody were to take you right out of your bed or wherever you were, and then they were to, do these procedures or whatever on you in different, cases and different things, then you're going to interpret that as like, a robber, burglar that should be doing life in prison. It's just like some of that, but I didn't, it's like a mixed feeling, so much of it. But why do you think it's through that trauma that we're able to get there? Because every single experiencer you talk to, it's going to be the same thing. It's nobody's ever got there. And that's just like the super space program. Like, look at how it's through trauma. Like it's through that in some sense of the way. I remember I drove with a dead man at like 7 years old, and we were going so fast. Like I thought for sure that was my beginning where the veil kind of really like thinned out when I was a child. So we remember going through a cornfield. It was just flying, and it was seeing the car go up almost to 100. And the guy died. He had hunched over the wheel. He's full foot is on that accelerator. But check this out. Just a mile before that, we were all been sleeping. I was 7. I was with my grandmother. She owned the salon, and we were all like sleeping because it's like in the middle of the night, like 1 in the morning. The car spins around just 3 miles back 3 times, enough to wake everybody up in that car. Otherwise, we would have been gone.
You've told me that story before, and honestly, I have no idea how to even begin to describe how freaking weird that is.
Yeah, right? I know.
That's why I will continue to preach radical empathy and treating every person that tells you their story like they're yourself, just a part of you. You're dealing with your own inner child, and respecting their individual experiences, the uniqueness of all the stuff that brought them there, and understanding that we have this thing in our head that's like a screwed up piece of jello that does everything for us, and there's like one big part of the brain that for whatever reason we just don't seem to understand stuff unless we're scared shitless.
Right.
Like unless we hit rock bottom or experience something tragic, we don't always want to get it. And it would be great if we worked on ourselves to the degree that something could just happen and we got it the first time. And I think that in areas where people are being abducted in the traumatic way, and it's not through dreams or whatever the case is, and it's actual physical abductions and implants and all that, that we actually need to listen a little bit more deeply, because we have MUFON and all these other people that compile these stories, and then you never hear anything about it. So there's not really that deep investigation.
Because they're reporting you to the 3-letter agency people.
There's no deep investigation. Yeah.
You don't need to go any further.
Dive deep, for sure. We need to dive deep into that person as a whole and figure out what led them to that, and unpack everything else around it so that we can actually get some answers. But a lot of it's not being dealt with in that way. I mean, I suspect that a lot of people who claim to be dealing with it in that way are kind of making stuff up too. They're kind of fraudulent and phony in their own way, and we need to break through that as well right now, because there's too much whistle sucking, as I like to call it, going on out there, and they're just diluting the atmosphere with garbage.
Yes, they are too. And it's jamming the system. And but like you said, weeding through it and really giving people, everybody should have access to information. And I say if there's like a group of people, because I just had this happen not too long ago, and they were like so angry by somebody that I had on an interview, so angry, like the crazy angry. Like, and I said, why is it such a problem for people to get the information? Like, you really think that's healthy after all this time that you have a group of people that's like so angry that you even put something out there? Like, it wasn't didn't harm anybody, it didn't harm themselves, you know what I'm saying? Like, there was nothing, they didn't even have to tune in and listen to it, but the simple fact. It's like, that right there to me is dangerous. That's the dangerous part.
There's so much fear as well. Like I mentioned, Tavistock has their hands in everything. And, we have Tavistock and the other three-letter agencies that basically have perfected how to traumatize people through the media since 1947. And so, like, I've most famously referenced the psychological effects of Bridget Jones's Diary because I had a client that I poked around in her subconscious. She had a great life, but the reason why she was fat and sick and couldn't stop smoking cigarettes is because her favorite movie was Bridget Jones's Diary, and every day for 20 years she sat there and watched that movie when she was in a bad emotional state. So she started to learn behaviors like self-deprecation, and she had bad romantic idealizations and relationship anxiety and all these different things. So what you're taking in around the ET phenomenon is exactly the same because you're getting told how to react to it. And if that's hardwired into you by hacking your stress fear memory pathway, you're only going to remember what's in your hippocampus.
Yeah.
And until that's dealt with, like some of these people that don't believe in aliens and stuff actually need to go to hypnotherapy so that they can have their issues with those beliefs dealt with. But they probably won't.
You know what, though? You gotta find somebody you can trust. That's what I said. I won't go because I don't want somebody else's memories, like, because you're because of this very reason. So, I would let you do it, though. I trust you enough to do it.
I would do it. I would do it. We've talked
Okay.
about this, and
Yeah, we should. We should do it and, like, document it, and then you can show people
yeah.
after.
But another thing there that I want to mention before we go is that there's a lot of dickheads out there that think that by saying, "Oh, well, why don't you tell me more about your perspective?" that's going to lead to a healthy debate. But the idea is not to debate it. It's again to open up a can and shut the fuck up and listen and let the person tell you what they think. Don't correct them. Don't tell them what you believe. Ask them, okay, but how is it that you arrived at that conclusion? And I very specifically want people to understand that an opinion is just the best conclusion that you have come to with all of the information that you have compiled so far. But it's not all the information. So when people get into this thing, like now we're gaslighting each other and calling each other names and saying you have cognitive dissonance, and it's like, okay, that it's really not that simple though.
My son calls it rage baiting.
That's the new term for it that the kids are using, but that's rage baiting is more like when they put stuff on the internet to get you angry on purpose. But it goes way deeper than just having information that conflicts. You have to talk to a person and let them tell you everything and engage them in a way that they actually feel safe with you. Because if they don't feel safe with you, you're not going to listen to a damn thing that you say. If you just want to put your opinions in after they put theirs in and try to convince them and strong arm them or think that by being diplomatic that's going to work, it don't.
No,
It don't
we
work.
called it entering an intersubjective experience where you're there, you experience it with the person, but you pull the emotion out. But you have to find out
Yeah.
their definition of everything because our definitions might be different.
Mm-hmm.
And then you
Yeah.
show them, you give them a different response than what other people have given them, and it starts to rewrite the wrong.
Yeah, because people don't understand that our differences actually can make us stronger together.
Right.
So if you can capitalize on your differences rather than try to say, okay, well, I'm different from you because I think this thing and you think that thing, and one of us has to be right and the other has to be wrong, you're never going to get anywhere. And that's one of the biggest shitstorms that we're all stuck in right now in the world.
Absolutely. Well, I just looked at the time. I just wanted to say this has actually been fascinating. You'll have to come on too on my show, and as it's been fun to sit on because usually I'm sitting in the hot seat, so it's been real fun and learn more about
Yeah.
you and everything. In closing tonight, I always ask, what would you like to leave the audience with?
What would I like to leave the audience with? I would like to leave the audience with a thought. What if everything that you knew was actually just fake? What if everything you knew was fake? So tomorrow when you get up, remember this. Walk around and be like, okay, is that fake? Is that fake? Is that fake? Is that a lie? And you'll probably see so much more stuff than you didn't see before. And don't let it drive you crazy. Just realize that we live in a sea of lies, and everybody that you talk to that you disagree with, it's because they're lying to themselves for one reason or another. Probably you're probably lying to yourself about stuff too. So give each other a little bit of grace and realize it's all fake.
It is too, when you get right down to it. When you start to, you just probably triggered some awakening in people that have not been there, because that's exactly how it all starts.
Well,
Is
that's why they're
questioning
gonna be like,
everything.
Coley and Jehan, you guys are locked up now. Your social credit score is zero.
Yeah, I know. I won't even get a vending machine now at a bus stop. I mean, that's how my social credit score is, like, just plummeted. Yeah, no, that's so true. But those are pretty powerful words, and they're good words to leave everybody with. So, if you have a reaction to this, um, do
Your
we
reaction's fake.
yeah, it's all fake. Yeah. No, snap out of it. No, I'm joking. But yeah, no one could. That was absolutely fascinating. That was an great conversation. I want to thank you for coming on, MK Invasion. It's been really fun to have you over here. So yeah. So in closing, everybody, I wanted to thank everybody in chat and who is watching. Again, I'm Coley from SNX Radio, or Coley UFO. You can find me on X, Twitter, YouTube. It's SNX Radio, and any other platforms are really on there. And then two, tell them where they can find you at, Jehan.
Well, again, you can find me on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. That's on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Rumble, YouTube. Shadows of Curiosity is also available exclusively on Spreaker. And if you would like to contact me, send me an email, selfsabotageinfo@proton.me. You can also find the Boundless Authenticity exclusive Facebook group. All you have to do is type in facebook.com/groups/boundless authenticity. And yeah, I'm on Instagram at boundless authenticity.
That's awesome. Yeah, make sure to go, and he's got some great guests on, such as myself. No, need to say anything. Like, so you do a great job over there. So love that. And you and I thank you so much for always helping out and being behind the scenes too with stuff on my end. I appreciate it, and I value your friendship. So
That's how
I
we do
look
it.
forward.
We're family. One
Yes,
hand
that's right.
washes the other.
That's right. That's right. So, on behalf of MK Invasion, if you have not already, hit that like, subscribe, that bell for all notifications, share, and definitely comment. So, we appreciated having you. You can find us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure that you again hit that subscribe button to Forever Entertainment. We appreciate all that they do. And tonight's episode, again, is brought to you by Killer Pizza, the upcoming feature film from Forever Entertainment. Killer Pizza is starring some of horror's greatest icons, so definitely check it out. Join through Indiegogo today. There are lots of amazing perks available for the backers, including unique acting opportunities, official MDB producer credits, and more. So definitely check it out. Also, custom merchandise and lots more. All of your support is so appreciated. So go to www.scaredazone.net and you can find MK Invasion. See, here I go again. MK Invasion merch and episodes soon. So they're going to be just updating as they go. So it's absolutely wonderful. Thanks again. I'll see everybody next Tuesday.